home. We're a pretty large population, especially here within Broad Run. We have over, some of the numbers have said 20,000 or more people. So we're a very big community, have a lot of sub-associations. So this is just opportunity to bring in candidates and to really get to have a Q&A with the candidates. And that's what we're going to do first. So our first candidate is Paul Lott. So I'll just read a quick little bio. So Paul is a husband, father, and proud veteran of the U.S. Army. He is a committed Christian and the author of a best-selling book on Christian theology. He also served as a full-time pastor and Christian teacher for several years. Paul's a 35-year career engineer and executive. Paul has served in senior technical and senior executive positions running projects spanning the Fortune 100, Department of Defense, and other government agencies. In addition, Paul has worked in the semiconductor and medical technology industries and developed several large-scale systems as chief architect on federal projects. He led projects in the United States, Japan, Taiwan, the United Kingdom, and Germany. In 2012, he decided to leverage his skills and experience in education and trained by founding an education technology firm. The company develops advanced learning technology and methods based on neuroscience and evidence-based best learning practices. So with that said, I want to turn over to Paul. So Paul's the Republican candidate for delegate. I'm going to let you do this because we're going to use this so that we get soon.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi. Thanks for coming out. Hopefully my remarks will be relatively brief and I'll take any questions that you have. There's no gate on what the questions are and I'll do my best to answer. So hello, ladies and gentlemen. I came with a few goals in mind. What I hope is that when you leave here, you have a better understanding of who I am and why I want to be a delegate. And I hope that even if we differ on policy and politics, that we leave here with a deep respect for each other as individuals and fellow Virginians. In fact, maybe I'll make a few new friends here tonight. Democrats, independents, and Republicans have one thing in common. All of these groups are comprised of decent, hardworking people who desire to help make the lives of others better. We differ in how we should do that, and oftentimes those differences can lead us to rather emotional and intense debates. But today I hope to lay a foundation for discussion. Freedom, the freedom to nurture, is the foundation of all freedom and the first fundamental human right. Unconditional love and nature are what give parents the right to pass on to their children the best parts of themselves and to be able to teach their children their moral beliefs and values. Parents' rights were not put in the Bill of Rights because it is in the preamble of the Constitution as a purpose. And it says, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. In other words, ourselves and our posterity translates to us and our children, families. If the family fails, the country fails. I'm running to protect Virginia families. Protecting the family is the only way to protect children. A child's trust in a parent is not interchangeable with the trust of a teacher, a friend, or anyone else. A child who loses trust in their parents loses trust for all adults or authorities in general. This has been settled science for more than 100 years. And yet today, you and I are in a battle with government agencies that does not trust us to raise our children without their interference. I know there are bad parents in this world, but it is the mistake to force chemotherapy on an entire community because a few people got cancer. We should not treat everyone as if they have a sickness. We should not treat the best of us as if they are the worst of us. That is what I see particularly when it comes to policies being pushed in our schools through state level mandates and policies. Parents need a voice. Responsible government trusts its citizens with their fundamental rights and freedoms. It trusts that some mistakes will be made, but overall, the vast majority of people Vast majority of people try to do what is best for their families. And to me, that's what parents' rights means. I believe that schools should focus on academics and parents should focus on the social and emotional growth of their children. A child is about 5 hours in school, and during that time, our teachers don't have enough time to teach most kids to be competent in a given subject matter. The NEAP publishes a national report card on schools. It's an arm of the U.S. Department of Education. According to the website, www.nationsreportcard.com, in Virginia, our fourth graders' reading scores are below their 1992 levels. They scored 221 in 1992. Last year in 2022, they scored 214. Note, proficiency is 240. So proficiency has never been achieved by Virginia fourth graders. Our eighth graders scored at 260 in reading. That is below their 1998 score of 266. We don't have earlier data. In 1998, before all of these add-on programs, the reading proficiency gap between white and Black students was 23 points. In 2022, the latest data, that gap has increased to 25 points. Layering on non-academic and often unfunded requirements on teachers is not fair. It is one of the leading reasons for teacher loss. That is a fact. We have to stop the trend of transforming our schools from educational institutions into therapeutic institutions, where teachers are trained as amateur psychiatrists tasked with determining the emotional well-being of our children and documenting those findings as fact. The justification is that it will improve education outcomes. There is no evidence for this based on the data that I just cited. In fact, most academic progress made in Virginia predates these modern add-on initiatives by at least a decade. Now let's talk about systemic racism in Virginia public schools. I was raised in some of the poorest Black majority cities in the country before my dad died when I was 12. I have lived racism. When I was in kindergarten, a bunch of kids jumped me and tried to beat me to death at the cinder block, broke my left arm. I know what racism looks like. I've looked it in the face, I've survived it. And what you see today in most instances is not racism. There's a difference between systemic poverty and systemic racism. All races share in the pain of systemic poverty. I don't believe America is systemically racist, and here are the facts and data. If America is systemically racist, resulting in an economic advantage for white Americans, then the economic outcomes should overwhelmingly favor white Americans. We call it white privilege. And it's the basis for many of the programs that are being put in our public schools, anti-racism, et cetera. Rates of poverty are the ultimate measure of educational and social outcomes. I hope we all agree on that. But according to US Census data, if you were born Black and poor between 1959 and 2018, pre-COVID, you were 3.5 times more likely to escape poverty in America than a white child born at the same time. In 1959, the Black poverty rate was 55.1%. The white poverty rate was 18.8%. By 1968, the Black poverty rate fell to 34.7%, and again 20.8% by 2018. In contrast, white poverty fell 8.8% to 10% in 1968, and went up to 10.1% by 2018. On average, white poverty has been flat for a generation and a half. It was reported in 2021 that the rate still holds steady at 10%, while every other major racial group has shown improvement dramatically. So how can America be systemically racist when Blacks and other groups have a clear advantage in escaping poverty? Am I an extremist to look at the data? It shows no benefit to being white economically. We have entire school programs being pushed based on the false narrative of white privilege. Facts should bring people together, not tear them apart. So let's look at the local numbers. The Black-white graduation disparity rate in Loudoun County schools as of 2022 is 1.4%. Whites graduate at 98.8%, Blacks graduate at 97.4%. That is even an improvement over the 2018 numbers, where the graduation differential was 1.9%. Of the largest school systems in the state, Loudoun County has the least disparity in Black-white graduation rates of any school system. The dropout rate for whites in Loudoun County is 0.5%. The dropout rate for Blacks in Loudoun County is 1.3%, a 0.8 difference. This has been the trend in Loudoun for 15 years, predating all equity, SEL, and SEO programs. So I ask the question, why are we spending money and teacher training time and dollars on achieving an equity we've already achieved? The next challenge is to increase core proficiencies. And that means spending more time on academics, the one area where we're failing. There is no evidence that these additional programs actually make a difference. So let me address a few other important issues that I've been accused of being an extremist in an email fundraiser sent by my opponent. Across Virginia, parents have been trying to have sexually explicit material removed from school libraries, or to at least restrict access to this material without parental consent. This makes sense when you consider that a 10-year-old cannot buy a ticket to attend a rated R movie, or that the FCC enforces standards on what is broadcast over the public airwaves. These laws have been in place for more than a generation. It doesn't make sense to give access to material barred from public broadcast by general consent to be made available in libraries without parents' permission. Parents fought hard to put these rules in place to protect their children from early sexualization more than a generation ago. This is not an extremist viewpoint. It's not an attack on those of alternative sexual orientation. The material banned over a generation ago was primarily heterosexual material. The issue parents fought for was to protect their children from material they deemed inappropriate. What we have today is part two of that same struggle. It's not picking on any group, it's what we did a generation ago. The second issue I want to call out, under Virginia law, unless a parent is unavailable to consent to emergency care, doctors must get the permission of a parent to treat a child. A school nurse cannot administer medication without consent of a parent. Yet there is a dangerous trend to pass laws that will allow children to be given puberty blockers and gender transition surgery without permission of the parent. There should be no medical procedures or medication given to a child without the consent of the parent. I think most parents would not characterize my view as extremist and not an attack on transgender students, as my opponent asserted. A minor can't get a tattoo because the law deems their judgment to be too immature to make a permanent decision. Poor judgment is the reason minors can't drink alcohol or buy cigarettes. I'm advocating for consistency with the current mainstream standards that have been in effect for more than a generation. Parents have already fought to protect their kids. Why are we being forced a generation later to reiterate or relitigate parents' rights. You can look at my website to find out the other policies that I advocate, but I want to leave you with the thought. Have you ever considered that you never find good schools in bad communities, or bad schools in good communities? What you do find is that the quality of our schools are the reflection of the community. And the quality of the community is a reflection on who you are, the type of parents you are, how you teach your children, what you teach them, and how you guide them. We have to stop this narrative that parents are not the single most important aspect in the life of their children and the single most important influence. We can't codify these things in law. My mom, 8th grade graduate from a rural Mississippi school. Before my dad died when I was 12, I thought he was the smartest man I knew, very educated. I learned after that it was actually my mother, though uneducated, who was quite a bit smarter than my dad. So my freshman year, I came back for Christmas, and I was ranting about how smart all of my Harvard professors were. And my mom just said, walk away. And I know my mom. I said, well, she has something to say. I just may as well ask her. So I go and ask her. I said, Mom, what was that about? She goes, well, what you're telling me is that a school picks a bunch of smart kids who would have done their work anyway, gives them some books, and then everyone thinks that Harvard is so great. She goes, I'm sick and tired of schools taking credit what parents have done. A few years ago, I did a study. I have a nonprofit that I run. And in the study, I wanted to look at the idea of generational school performance. So I went to my classmates and our friends, and I interviewed 1,000 Ivy League graduates. I surveyed their parents and their children, because I was looking for generational academic performance. And the result of the study came down to one thing that demystified what makes a kid good in school. It is not true that parental involvement is the key to good academic performance from children. What is true is parental leadership is key to academic performance in children. In all of the instances where the families demonstrated generational academic excellence, the parents did not see the school as being in charge. They saw themselves as being in charge and responsible, and the school was simply one tool in a tool chest of their child's education. And that's the mindset we have to get back to. It was always about the community. It was always about the parents. It was always about the family. So I'll end with this. You are the mechanic. The school is your toolbox, and the car is your kid. If you don't fix it, those tools are useless. I'll take questions then.